Welcome back to Stream of Bhakti. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the wonderful, beautiful book that describes the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga. And I'm again joined by my good friend Brihat, way up in Sharanagati, which is, that's about 4 hours north of Vancouver, right?
North and
Up
a
the highway.
little east.
Yeah, we were hoping before the pandemic set in to do a retreat up there.
Yeah.
And one day we hope to. Such a beautiful place, Sharanagati. Anyway, thanks, Brihat, for being here again. You got a lot of stuff going on up there these days. Aside from fighting fires, just as we were talking before we started here, you're also a bit of a farmer.
Yeah,
So
that's my main thing, actually.
yeah, that's kind of unusual, isn't it? Like, I just like to hear a little bit about that, like, because not many people take that up as a profession these days, I think. And you're not like doing massive commercial farming or anything. You just have
No.
some land. And what
Yeah,
motivates you?
I mean it's slowly growing, but yeah, anyway, it runs in my family. All my grandparents have a agricultural background. And I mean, the main thing is that we're growing vegetables, and we are growing enough for ourselves for a good, I don't know, probably 8 months of the year. So we don't have to buy anything vegetable wise. And then during the summer, we also have enough for the the community here, which is about, I think there's probably about 25 families full time here. So what we do grow, we have enough for those people also.
Okay, that's a big deal.
But yeah, it's big. It's big, and I'm hoping next year will be twice as big. But we're also getting into things like wheat. We grew wheat last year. We ate our own bread for 3 months, I think. So
Wow.
it's slowly growing, slowly wrapping our minds around it. The philosophy behind it is just that I'm growing as much food as I can, and so whatever the result is, we have for ourselves and excess for others. But yeah.
Are you doing this because it's just like in your blood, so to speak? You just feel like you want to do it, or is there more? Is there another mission behind it all, or?
Uh, I mean, it's the lifestyle. I think honestly, if you ask any farmer, um, farming is not like an easy occupation, and it doesn't always have very lucrative results, but farmers do it because they love the lifestyle. And so yeah, I mean, it's the lifestyle. The I would say the main reason we're doing it is because it's definitely allowed us to simplify our lives, and it allows for me, it allows me time to focus on other things that I feel are important, like things like this, and just not being, I don't have to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week or more. And so it definitely, and there's a lot of freedom in it. And so it allows to focus on other things as well.
That's a really great segue, actually, for what we're going to get into today,
Oh,
possibly,
yeah.
right? As some of the topics that come up in the commentary today. All right, well, let's do this. I'll chant some mantras, and then we'll get right into this. Our invocation mantras: Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat. We always recite some mantras of invocation at the beginning of the Bhagavatam to acknowledge the greatness of this knowledge and from where it comes, the teachers who have been preserving or holding this tradition of knowledge for so long, handing it down generation after generation. And also the Bhagavatam itself begins the first words of the Bhagavatam, right? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and which is addressing the divine, the divine in a personal form, which is very much the topic of today's part of today's text that we're going to get into. So we're in the chapter of, this is chapter 11 of the first canto, Krishna's entrance into Dwarka. So again, there's this departure. Krishna is leaving Hastinapur, which is today's Delhi, and leaving for the city of Dwarka, which is today's Dwarka. Still there. Of course, this Dwarka was off the coast a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly in the same location, but it's the same name in the proximity of where that city was. So we left off at text number 8. Or we did text number 7 last time, so we're picking up at text number 8. Anything you want to say from picking up from last week, Brihat?
No, I just the last text that we were reading, I was just noticing how the Krishna is the leader of the people of Dwarka, and how the citizens there, how they felt so protected by him. And in this last verse, all the, basically all the different, they're mentioning all these different people in our lives that are meant to be our protectors, and how they felt that kind of relationship with Krishna, that he was fulfilling all those kind of all those different roles for them. And so they really felt like they were very grateful and appreciative and happy to see him back, happy to see him coming back, because they felt all these things in relation with him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I remember you were making the point that it's something that's not really experienced in the relationships between, and today, like
not so much, yeah. At least in the official in the official leaders, it's not so much. There's definitely leaders in our lives, I think, people that they have the qualities and they just step up and they do it, and people see them in that way and feel that way. But it seems like in the official kind of systems that we have set up, that you don't always get people of this kind of character in those roles, unfortunately.
We're certainly protected. We certainly feel protected to some degree, because we live with a certain feelings of security that are based on the structures of our society. But those structures and that security has not given rise to like real love towards those in positions of leadership.
Yeah, that's
which was different in the case of Krishna in the city where he was the leader.
Yeah, there was really deep feeling of love. Yeah. There's a deep relationship there.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Text number 8. This is these are the residents of Dwarka as Krishna is entering. These are the things that they're saying as they see him coming. So, okay. Oh, it is our good luck that we have come again today under your protection by your presence. For you rarely visit even the denizens of heaven. Now it is possible for us to look into your smiling face, which is full of affectionate glances. We can now see your transcendental form full of all auspiciousness. I'd like just to pause on this for a minute, because there's in the commentary. Well, let's just read the commentary and see where this goes. Like this is a little far out. I mean, like from one side, we can be reading these texts and it's like listening to a story. This is happening, that's happening. Krishna's going here, Krishna's going there. Before it was somebody else doing something. And so we kind of like, sometimes we are just following the storyline. But in this case, it's not only the storyline, it's the activities of Krishna, who is the original avatar. And so, or the avatari, as we say, the source of the avatars. And that um, so who it is we're actually observing in this moment. Prabhupada in the commentary kind of like really, he really focuses in on this. And
Mhm,
now,
mhm.
and it kind of like brings forth the extraordinary reality that the Bhagavatam is describing is really kind of far out. And we might as well just read it straight up, you know, and look at it and 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 see if it's just uh, think about it. Like what's actually being suggested here. I'm struggling for words trying to trying to capture this description. So let's just read it. Do you want to read the?
It sounds like it's like, yeah, it sounds like, oh, I can. It sounds like you're just presenting that the Bhagavatam is presenting a picture of the world in which we live, which may not be exactly the picture that we've heard in our,
Yes,
growing
yes,
up in
yes,
our,
yes.
and
Yeah,
so, yeah.
and it's
Just
cool to
before,
entertain. It's
yeah, yeah. Just before we go ahead, just from the verse, I was noticing how, um,
yep,
just what they were saying. Krishna's, obviously he's a special person, because they're just making the point that like not very many people see you, like, and you've decided to come here. So, like, it's not always that, people who are famous or whatever visit, a particular place. So they're they're appreciating that, he's a very famous person, and he's come there to see them. Okay, so the commentary here.
mm-hmm.
So Krishna, in his eternal personal form, can be seen only by the pure devotees. Krishna is never impersonal, but he is the supreme absolute person, possible to be visited. Uh, possible to be visited by devotional service face to face, which is impossible to be done even by the denizens of higher planets. When Brahma,
So
yes,
let's just
sorry.
pause there for a moment. I mean, so the conception of the absolute here is that of a personal form that can be met face to face, and we should just know that the Bhagavatam is presenting that as a reality, and how this is very central to the teachings of Bhakti. But so now um, that's pretty far out. And the other thing is that um, and this person, I guess that's coming out in not just this text but other texts, but is filled with beauty and kindness. And
Mm.
so some of Krishna's personal descriptions are going to happen here, but the idea is that there is a divine personality from which everything comes, and that's part of this. That's very central to the teachings of Bhakti.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh, just on that, like, this is what the Bhagavatam is presenting. So you have a few choices, like either everything comes from, like a primordial soup, or a big bang, or whatever, like there's a few options that we have in terms of, um okay, where did everything come from? So the
Mm-hmm.
Bhagavatam is saying that everything came from a person,
Yeah. Now, if you
and
get
that person is Krishna.
yeah, and if you were to compare that hypothesis, let's say, to other hypothesis, like they're all equally, in one sense, they're all
Far
equally
out.
far out.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay,
And none of them have been proved scientifically, like in terms of the standards of modern science. None of them have actually been proved.
mhm,
So the option that everything came from a person or from a primordial soup, you could say in one sense that you can put them all on an equal, playing field.
Yeah. Well, the primordial soup is like, at least it's conceivable, even though it's like, even though it doesn't, even though it's debated even in the scientific world. But the fact that what happened before
Well,
the
yeah.
like, because the
where did
origin
where
of the
did
universe,
where did the soup come from?
yeah, like the idea that there was an explosion from nothing. And so like, and this is something that is more or less taken for granted, because we may not think about it so deeply, but even people who are spiritual, scientific, religious, irreligious, whatever, like if they're like people who apply their intelligence to this idea that something came from nothing, there's obviously a problem there.
Right.
There's a logical problem there with that idea, and so it takes a pretty much a total release of reason to accept that as a source. And so it's kind of like full blown faith,
Yeah.
um, just as much as somebody may have faith in some other way that the universe began, but there's tangibly no difference in the sense that reason does not have an account of
Yeah.
how creation as we know it today exists or came into being. And so, although this is the idea that it came from a personal divinity,
Hmm.
um, you know, is objectively no more far out than it came from nothing.
Right.
And the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam, as we go through the all 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam, will gradually fill in the reason part, fill in
Yeah.
the reasoning aspect of it.
Right.
And
Right.
so we can put all the pieces together and see how, well, actually this really could make sense, and then how actually we can experience this in yoga as well.
And also, just what you're saying, logically speaking, that something came from something is more logical than something coming from nothing, because that has
Mm-hmm.
never happened, that something came from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas something coming from something, what that something is, that's what has to be discovered. But yeah, it's much more logical to accept that something came from something as opposed to something came from nothing.
Exactly. And what that something is, again, in the traditions of yoga, is we kind of like, there's variety there in terms of how we want to relate to that something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It can be very personal because Krishna is personal. And so that's the focus of bhakti. But there are other yoga traditions that focus more on Krishna's energy rather than his personality. So you've got like more,
Yeah.
uh, you know, all pervading understanding of spirituality, less personal.
I I would say
Yes.
I would say that the aspect of like something coming from something, that something that everything came from has an eternal aspect to it. I would say that that's accepted across the board.
Right.
And then what's being pointed out here is that there's an eternal person, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's not necessarily accepted across the board. But the aspect of eternality, this is that's something that's the source of everything, that eternality is accepted across the board.
Mm-hmm. So let's hear more far out stuff, because if we accept that first point, right, then there's that there's obviously going to be a lot that goes along with that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Krishna, what else is there with Krishna? So now in the commentary, Prabhupada is going to give a little description. We're going to get a little glimpse into a higher realm here. First person he's going to talk about is Brahmaji.
Okay,
You
so
want to,
do you want me
yeah.
to continue, or you want to?
No, you go ahead. I mean, I don't
Okay.
think we need to get in at this point to discuss like who Brahmaji and who Brahma is and who else does he mention here. Well, we won't get into too much detail, but we'll just kind of hear this. How the
Okay.
description.
So when Brahma and other demigods want to consult Vishnu, the plenary portion of Krishna, they have to wait on the shore of the ocean of milk, where Vishnu is lying on white land, Svetadweep. This ocean of milk and the Svetadweep planet are the replica of Vaikuntha Loka within the universe. Neither Brahma nor the demigods like Indra can enter into this island of Svetadweep, but they can stand on the shore of the ocean of milk and transmit their message to Vishnu, known as Kiradakashaya Vishnu.
Why don't we pause there for a second? That was a lot of
Okay.
description. For someone just hearing for the first time, it's like, what is this, right? So, in the translation here, it's saying how, like, they're feeling very fortunate that now they're seeing Krishna as he returns to Dwarka, because it's very rare for anybody to actually see him.
Right.
And so, here it's describing how, what to speak of Krishna, even his expansion, because in the Bhagavatam we see Vishnu is described as an expansion of Krishna. Even even Vishnu is very difficult to see, and great personalities who live in a higher dimensions than us, Brahma, Indra, they will, when they're in distress about something, they'll go to this place somewhere in the universe, which is kind of like it's kind of like an embassy of the spiritual sky, you could say. They can't enter it. So there's the material realm that we're in now, the material sky. And so we learn that there is a spiritual reality. Eventually we're getting there. In the Bhagavatam, there's going to be more description about eventually the spiritual reality. And so to where Krishna, from which Krishna descends to this material realm. So this place they cannot enter. It's beyond their reach. But somewhere in this universe, there's this kind of special place that's a window into the spiritual realm. And in that window there's a form of Vishnu that resides. And so they go to this place. It's kind of like that there's some kind of border that they can't cross, here described as an ocean of milk. And they can come to that shore, and they can try to appeal through that dimension that they stand in front of. They try to appeal to Vishnu as an expansion, and for guidance. And so they have to go through all this, right? And now here in Dwarka, Krishna is just walking in.
Right.
So it's kind of a very rare sighting to see Krishna.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in the course of that, all of these details about the universe and all of this stuff, we're going to hear about it in great detail eventually. But this being the first canto, we're just getting little like bursts of description.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Things are being introduced along the way in a timely way, so that when we get into further sections, we've already been introduced to concepts. So when the concepts start to become fleshed out, we're kind of like, we're warmed up to it a little bit, and we can start to make sense out of it. Any thoughts?
There's a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess the point being made here is that Krishna is rarely seen.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just thinking that, yeah, anyway, there's the thing is we could spend the rest of the time discussing this point. So I don't know if we want to go there.
Well, see, we got a lot. See, this is the first canto. And Radhika, who was with us a few weeks ago, she was stressing this too, is that there's a lot of things being introduced here. There's a lot of concepts and foreshadowing of events and things. And it's like planting the seed,
I guess,
Yeah,
I guess. And this just because this is going to come up in the next verse and commentary, it's just that if we can accept that the senses and the ability of us as human beings is limited, then we can, at least be open to the concept, some of these concepts here, that there could be things happening in the world that are beyond my perception, you know, beyond my current perception and comprehension. And I think that, one point I always that gives me some comfort is that it's not that these realities or things that are going on that the Bhagavatam is describing, it's not saying that these things are going on and you can't see them. But it's saying that you may not be able to understand all these realities right now, but you can perceive them. And the process of bhakti actually is the process of uncovering and revealing all of these things, these realities that are going on. So it is perceivable, but it's not perceivable by our current, the current situation that we're in. There's a different process to be able to understand all these things, but there is a process.
Mm-hmm. And I think that our kind of like conviction about that becomes stronger when we do start to perceive things that we couldn't perceive before through the process of bhakti. Like we may not be able to perceive Brahma, but we the process of bhakti does actually awaken our senses to a certain way that we perceive things that we didn't before. And so then it's confirmation. And we can continue to follow the course of realizations that are offered here. Like,
Yeah. And I think one practical example of that is like in kirtan. It's like you get awakened to a certain sense of happiness that you didn't experience before. It's happiness, but the quality of it is something that's different, something special. And so it's like we're being awakened to a reality that we weren't aware of before. So I think that's what the Bhagavatam is doing. But it's giving, it's giving it all at once. And
sometimes it's a little jarring.
Yeah.
All at once. Yeah. Let's go on to the next text.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, Krishna, whenever you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, or Hastinapur to meet your friends and relatives, every moment of your absence seems like 1,000,000 years. Oh, infallible one, at that time our eyes become useless as if bereft of sun. You want to read the commentary?
Okay. You wanted to, yeah. We are all proud of our material senses for making experiments to determine the existence of God, but we forget that our senses are not absolute by themselves. They can only act under certain conditions. For example, our eyes, as long as the sunshine is there, our eyes are useful to a certain extent, but in the absence of sunshine, the eyes are useless.
Basically making the same point you were just...
Do you want to go on?
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, that's actually the essence of the I think of the commentary here is that we how can we trust our senses to give us complete knowledge, right? And so how can we think that we're understanding everything about reality with the instrument that we have with our body now? Like our senses aren't able to perceive everything. So they're saying in the text here that our eyes are become useless. Like, of course, this is like expressing their affection, but what the residents here are saying is that there's not really any use of our eyes if we can't look at you. And eyes, it's as if all light has been removed, because without light, the eyes they don't operate. You can't actually use eyes unless you've got some form of light. The eyes capture the light, right? So they become useless. And so, Prabhupada's taking advantage of that in the commentary, by pointing out, yeah, like, remember, your eyes are, they're only useful in certain circumstances. And same with the ears, nose, and all of the information that we're gathering into our mind and into our intelligence. It's all like very useful in certain circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in other circumstances, it's just not, we're not able to understand or perceive things.
It's like, what is the use of our voice if we can't use it for kirtan?
Yeah. That's their sentiment, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I just, if I just want to bring up the point here that in the like the Bhagavatam, the conception that it's bringing out, it has it's talking about acquiring, like we're talking about knowledge, right? We're talking about what is the reality of things. So that if somebody understands the reality of something, we would say that that person has knowledge. And so in the Bhagavatam conception, there's three ways of acquiring knowledge. One is through our senses, which it says is not very good because our senses are limited, they're imperfect. Like when the sun goes down, you can't see anymore. And even when the sun is there, we can see, but we, even from science, we know that we can only see so much, even there's animals that have the ability to see things that we can't see as human beings. So the Bhagavatam says this is one way of acquiring knowledge, but it's imperfect. And whatever knowledge we get, it won't be complete. And another way of acquiring knowledge is by logical reasoning, by the power of our intelligence, our mind and intelligence. But it says this is also imperfect because just like our senses, our mind and intelligence is also limited. And you can see that in the scientific field. It's like people are always coming up with another theory about, what is the reality of things. So it's like, oh, they discovered something else. Now you got to fit that into the whole. So it's Bhagavatam is also saying that that's also, you'll never come to a complete understanding of things by these two methods. And then the other is by hearing from those who actually know the truth, and ultimately hearing from the place where the truth actually comes from. So like Bhagavatam, we're going back a lot to the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, but that's really where everything is encompassed, that the absolute truth is that person from which everything has emanated. So if you hear the truth from that source, then you'll actually get the full picture of the reality of the truth. So that's what Bhagavatam is trying to give us, the truth coming from the original source of the truth.
Yeah, nicely said. And that's one of the reasons why the Bhagavad Gita is so blatantly a respect. Like, it's so blatantly holds that position as a book of knowledge because it's Krishna speaking.
Right.
So the Bhagavad Gita
right.
is
and he's taken as an authority. It's like you go to university and you listen to the teacher because the person's an authority on the subject. So Krishna is really like respected as an authority on the subject of reality, of the knowledge of how things actually. Yeah.
All right. So let's keep going.
Yes.
Well, Krishna, if you live abroad all the time, then we cannot look at your attractive face, whose smiles vanquish all our sufferings. How can we exist without your presence? Upon hearing their speeches, Krishna, who is very kind to the citizens and the devotees, entered the city of Dwarka and acknowledged all their greetings by casting his transcendental glance over them. We're just getting little small descriptions of him, of him as a person. His what does it say here? Casting his tree. Yeah, it's not really describing Krishna in great detail at this time, but But the point is that he's very eager to reciprocate. Like, he's entering into a city and he's glancing at everybody and acknowledging, like, and I guess as we keep on going, we'll get more of a picture of Krishna's beauty and his attractiveness as we go. But like, I guess it's mostly being described through the emotional state of the people who are receiving him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah, we can read the commentary here.
Okay. Whole thing.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Krishna's attraction is so powerful that once being attracted by him, one cannot tolerate separation from him. Why is this so? Because we are all eternally related with him, as the sun rays are eternally related with the sun disk. The sun rays are molecular parts of the solar radiation. Thus, the sun rays and the sun cannot be separated. The separation by the cloud is temporary and artificial, and as soon as the cloud is cleared, the sun rays again display their natural effulgence in the presence of the sun. Similarly, the living entities who are molecular parts of the whole spirit are separated from Krishna by the artificial covering of Maya, illusory energy. This illusory energy, or the curtain of Maya, has to be removed, and when it is so done, the living entity can see Krishna face to face, and all his miseries are at once removed. Every one of us wants to remove the miseries of life, but we do not know how to do it. The solution is given here, and it rests on us to assimilate it or not.
Prabhupada is describing this. That's a really beautiful analogy, right? Like the sun and the cloud and the sun molecule.
Yeah.
Like, so when the cloud comes in front of the sun, it's it represents like an artificial covering of the sun. The sun can't actually be covered by a cloud. It just like, because a small cloud from my perspective will just kind of go across the sun and it'll appear to cover the sun, but it's not covered. The sun is massive. And so my relationship with the sun appears to be covered. I don't know, like trying to flesh this analogy out a bit here, right? So the idea is the cloud, right, is the bewildering material energy that we perceive ourselves as separated or different from divinity, from Krishna, the divine person. We think ourselves as we lose track of ourselves as spiritual beings.
Right.
And this misconception is described here as a cloud. It can actually be dispersed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's really good. It's a misconception. I like how you put that. I like how you put that. And it sounds like the natural state is a much nicer state of existence than the gray day. You can see it in Vancouver. It's a real reality. 6 months of the sun being covered, basically. It's and then when the sun comes out, it's like it's a great it's a great event. It's a great experience.
People look like they're as happy as the residents of Dwarka here.
Yeah, that's right. So when we come back to the reality of our spiritual existence, it's like that. Well, it's like that, except even a greater experience.
The cloud itself here in this analogy are the miseries that we experience, like the symptoms of us being clouded and forgetting our spiritual nature is that we experience unhappiness in its different forms in the world, and that awakening that spiritual identity has the natural consequence of becoming freed from the miseries that are found in this world. And that's an interesting discussion on its own, because we see that when people take up spiritual life and are really endeavoring to awaken, really endeavoring to connect with the divine and to other spiritual beings. We're all spiritual beings, but the miseries are still kind of there. Like, people, someone might get sick, someone, something might happen that's distressful and all that stuff. But we see that the misery that is being referred to is really referring to our internal state, like how we respond internally when things go the wrong way. And if one is very kind of spiritually strong, then they don't lose their sense of identity and self and happiness in this world when things don't go according to plan. Of course, it's the Bhagavatam and the teachings of Bhakti portray this situation as incompatible. We are spiritual beings, and we're very much incompatible with the sufferings that occur in this phenomenal world, in a material consciousness. We're not, these unhappinesses that we experience are not really compatible with us, and that's why that's why we experience unhappiness. So in other words, this material realm that we're living in is not the eternal place for us. And part of spiritual life is to realize how we don't really belong in this world in this way. Like, investing our happiness in this world would be like the wrong move. But that doesn't mean we don't experience happiness when we're in this world.
I can't remember who said this, but I remember hearing this quite a bit. But what's being pointed out here is that this happiness, the solution, there's no material solution to get rid of misery. There's a spiritual, the solution is a spiritual solution to awaken that spiritual nature is the way of getting rid of these miseries. And I think this is really, it's very practical, because especially in the society in which we live, which is, very much based on, there's a large push for consumerism and, producing more and more of different things. And the kind of the whole idea is that if you get this, or if you change your material situation in this way, when you get this house, or if you get this car, or if you get the new iPhone or whatever, when you change your material situation in some way, then happiness will be there. But the Bhagavatam is saying that never will you experience happiness by changing your material situation. And this is we all deal with this, even, the body gets sick. If I do this, or if I can do this and change it in this way, then I will experience happiness. So not to say that you can't have a better material quality of life. That can definitely be there. But ultimately, the miseries of life, which, for instance, like getting old, that's a misery of life. You can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of that. Or like death, for instance, you just can't get rid of those things, even if you have a perfect life. So the solution's being given here, and it's a spiritual solution.
Yeah, totally. And as we dig into it more, Bhakti is actually the process of finding happiness in a world that isn't actually offering it. But the practices of Bhakti are very much also about how to be in the world and to connect with that relationship with the divine, that happiness, which invokes that happiness from within. And so to actually live and act.
I think it's very much like goes with the theme of what we've been talking about. Like the spiritual reality is there and we can always connect to it. And bhakti is about that, how to, in everyday life, how to connect to that spiritual reality, because it's there, but we don't see it. So bhakti is, the teachings of bhakti are awakening us to how to connect to that spiritual reality in our, whatever we're doing in life. And to that degree that we can do that, then we'll get free of the, what's being pointed out here, the miseries of life. And to the degree that we don't do that. And so I just like to say, like, for myself, like, it's, if you're fully, if someone who's a fully realized soul, they'll never experience miseries of life. But me, it depends on the day, like I could wake up and, my consciousness, it could be a whole different thing. I could really experience the miseries of life, or I could experience it less, depending on how well I'm connecting to that, spiritual reality that day.
Yeah. And so that you probably have a few things you do during the day to keep yourself connected, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, Brihat, we have hit the end of our time.
I know.
Had to end a little earlier today, but I think we were both looking forward to the next text and the next commentary, which I guess that would be a great place to start next time. If you're into it.
You should
next week.
You shouldn't have invited me on the you shouldn't have invited me on the show. We're going to be stuck in this chapter for who knows how long.
Yeah, well, let's do it, because there's so much in here, right? I mean, sometimes we'll get into just descriptions without much commentary, but I mean, when we can dig into it, I really enjoy focusing on what's being shared here. It's really nice to contemplate. If we read too quickly, for one thing, there's just so much detail, right? And there's so much like stuff that's unusual that we're hearing. And so that in itself is kind of a cool experience. Like, it's nice just to hear new stuff, and it's coming from especially when it's about like the universe and and spiritual reality and things like that. Why not just hear it, right? It's going to have some impact. But sometimes we just got to slow it down and think about what's being said a little bit more. I really appreciate that you're into that. So thank you, Brihat. We'll wrap it up here and we'll pick up on the next text. It's true, we might end up taking a while to get through this chapter, but whatever. I appreciate that you're doing this. Thanks for being here again this week.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.